What's up, everybody? I'm here at the Electric Violin Shop. Eli's with us too.
Hi, I'm Eli.
He didn't get his name on the screen because he's not cool like that, but he is, and he's blurry. Um, yeah, he's here. So, yeah, Nick Hyde, what's happening, man? We are actually today going to be talking with Tyler Thackeray, who's the genius behind the Violin Torture account on Instagram and other socials. And Nick is wondering if it's violin enhanced interrogation techniques. Yeah, of course. So we're just going to jump right into this. Tyler, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So what was the inspiration behind this whole violin torture thing? Tell us more.
Well, first of all, I don't hate violins. I played the upright bass for a certain time, and I really gained a certain respect for my luthier. And then during COVID, one of my COVID hobbies was going to be getting into violin restoration, because I really do have a respect for like the history of an instrument and kind of like all the hands it has passed through and such. So pretty shortly after starting violin repair, which I did learn through an actual luthier, I didn't like just wing it. But anyway, learning like in doing that, I saw that we have this one image of a violin that has so much reverence and respect in the player's hands, and then when you hand it to a luthier, he goes and rips the neck off, tears the thing open, does all this crazy shit, like adds all these clamps, and it's just like kind of this horrific scene. It's like a slaughterhouse for violins. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, this is like violent torture. And from then on, I decided to be a little bit more experimental in my exploration of lutherie and started doing hybrids and things like that, and kind of just got the ball rolling into all these like weird ways to kind of piss people off and push buttons, and that's really what I'm here for.
It has become kind of like this performance art thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I follow a bunch of other performance people that like the guy that like breaks spaghetti on his head and stuff like that, and I think that yeah, there's like a visceral feeling that you get from it. It's not just, some people think, oh, you're just breaking violins or you're just putting violins in dishwashers. And I don't think it's just that. It's like, it is more performative. It's like showing you, it really does invoke emotion, which makes it, art, like an intentional emotion invoking act. I feel like it kind of is what you're saying.
Well, we were talking before the broadcast, like Eli and I both started as little kids. And from the time you're little, like it is just pounded into your skull that this is this holy, sacred object that you've got to be so careful, right? I think my mom and dad probably told me 1,000 times before I was 4, be careful, be careful, be careful. And it's so deep in your soul that like this inviolable object here that is worthy of worship. And, yes, the violin itself is a piece of art, but the real art is what you do with it. Right.
Yeah. I think sometimes musicians forget that, it's an art, and they don't have as much chill as they should, like they should maybe be a little more inclusive and open-minded around, playing the electric or things like that. And as fragile as a violin is, I mean, you can repair it, you can add wood chunks and whatever. I mean, you can do some pretty crazy repairs on these things. So, I mean, there really is like room to kind of experiment and mess around. And I think the most beautiful violins are the ones that have like a patina, have had so much use, and like has clear repairs and stuff. I mean, those are the most beautiful instruments to me. So if if you're sitting there with this new instrument, like it doesn't have any history. It doesn't really have like a soul to me. I feel like you really need to beat it up a little bit to really have like an interesting instrument.
It is so nice of you to say. I broke mine in half one time, and so I really appreciate that. Sometimes I have to turn it in kind of like
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I know, but
yeah, it happens. Actually, I have this one that I cut. I
yeah,
put up to full tension. I mean, it's not fully tense right now, but I put up to full tension. It has, the only thing keeping this thing up is this little sound post here. And I do have a video of someone actually playing it, and it just sounds like a more quiet instrument. But partly this is kind of an experimentation around the structural integrity of a violin, where everything kind of runs down the middle. And so I was able to just cut the sides straight off without anything, it didn't even lose tuning. And so that's just like another example of like, look, a violin isn't as fragile as you think. I'd literally just cut one in half and it's fine. I mean, not fine, but
Yeah, it probably doesn't sound quite the same.
It is cool. It
it's
kind of
like
reminds
more
me
of a
of like,
practice instrument now. It's like those like dancers violins, like the pochette or whatever.
Oh yeah,
I feel it's more like that. It's like compact. You can fit in your backpack now, as
it's a
long as you don't hit the
backpacker
sound
violin.
post. Yeah, exactly. Just you just don't pull the sound post because that's basically like a bear trap just gonna close on you.
I was gonna say, it kind of reminds me even of like the we have some NS violins that are again kind of minimalist, taking away the only thing that's really needed.
Well, this is a
uh,
Forte Vio violin,
oh yeah,
and it's
yeah. I mean, I must. Is it about the weight of like a wooden one? Because
yeah, yeah, it's really really light. Um, but it's kind of cool that like hello.
You
yeah,
can store snacks in
yeah.
there.
I mean, the electrics you can do a lot of crazy shit. I guess they don't really have sound posts, huh? Or is that a thing?
So the acoustic electrics do, but the solid bodies don't. In fact,
Yeah.
this one is a semi acoustic. It actually makes sound, but
Oh,
you
see, that's cool.
couldn't really perform it without being plugged in. It's kind of like the ES335 of the violin world,
Mm,
and it
that's cool.
it has a yes, it has a sound post in it.
What a pain in that little hole. You got
I
to
had to look.
get one in
Oh, it's
there.
great.
It's not a pain for me. It's a pain for him.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Good practice of
So I mean, it's
patience.
cool. I love that one with the baby head. By the way,
That's like
it's got like a little
one
baby
of
down
my
at the
favorites.
bottom.
Yeah, this is a Stratton.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Fun
So
fact.
that's kind of shit I'm into. Just kind of pushing the boundaries. I mean, there's a bunch of other acoustic makers who also have experimented with different shapes and like texturing of the wood, and I think that's what luthers tend to do towards the end of their career, because the industry is so specific to like one type of violin, like one traditional idea of this violin. And if you deviate from that, you probably won't have a successful career, so you kind of stick to that until you've actually made it, and then you be like, okay, now I'm going to break the rules. And I was just really ashamed that breaking the rules isn't the thing that gets you. I mean, maybe for some people it is, but there's such a fine, really really narrow lane that these violin makers can really travel in and still have like the respect of the industry. Yeah, in fact, my own mentor kind of stopped talking to me after I got more popular, because I just think that I mean, no offense to him, but there's just a conflict between kind of a violinist as a professional and kind of what I do. And like that professional violinist world is definitely like more gate kept and more like pretentious in a way. Like I hate to say it, and a lot of the people are really nice, but I mean it kind of is also true. So it's like that's part of what I do, is to help try to get the cool kids in with like the other kids. You know what I mean? Just have like a fun little weird violin party, and I'll attract the classic people. I'll attract the guitar players and the electric people, and just kind of everyone can have like little community there. I think that's partly what my page is about. For me, is I know I'll never be a musician, and I'm actually in tech, so I try to maintain a certain relevance in the musical world to, and connect with community, and to be able to like talk to people and share my thoughts and ideas and musical stuff, which I don't really have a platform for because I'm not a musician. So that's kind of another one of like the side goals that I have.
Well,
Sorry for that rant.
one of my friends is Rachel Barton Pine, who is super big name in the classical world and also the heavy metal world. And anytime there's sort of this gatekeepy thing going on, she is one of the first people to point out like this gatekeeping is not historically accurate. Like the design of a modern violin did not fall from the sky. The way we got these violins was by people experimenting. And you go back before that to the VLs and then the viola da gambas, and before that to more simple wooden boxes that existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, were the only instruments people knew. The way that we got to the Guarneri or the Strad copies that most people are playing today was through a period of evolution and experimentation. So, I mean, we can't possibly believe that something that was, perfected in 1700 can't be improved upon in the year
Yeah.
2022 or even changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the other pet peeves I have is just when people start talking about all the little minor details of how like a sound changes if you do this one little thing, or, like, to me, if I can't hear it, then I don't, that's not part of my reality. Like if you build a violin from this like sacred like oak that you found in some magical forest, like it's not going to necessarily sound better, right? It's a subjective, culmination of frequencies and shit that comes to your ear, and just like everyone is so, I don't know. I just think that it's so subjective. Like the creation of music, just like the sound waves that hit your ear. Like how do I know that this, if I want like a more darker or more bright sound? You know what I mean? It's all just like a personal preference, and so in a lot of ways, I'm really confused why people spend so much time trying to create like a better violin through those traditional means. It's like it's already, you're beating a dead horse or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's done. We did it. It's 500 years ago. One of the other just side things that I find so interesting is the great makers. They made violins during the Baroque era where the necks were shorter and the angles were lower. The music was a half step detuned,
Or
right?
more.
So,
Yeah.
people like Bach, they're writing music in a slightly different, key than how we play it today.
Yep.
And they're writing it for an instrument that was slightly different. And so we've never actually heard a Stradivari violin, because I believe there's only one in the world that still has like the traditional Baroque setup. So after taking this like masterpiece that's so perfect in every way that any detail would make it, not a masterpiece. Like one more stroke would ruin the painting. It's like, but here we are ripping the neck off, like changing the angle of the neck. And they're like, oh, look, now we have this other Stradivari. But it's like, no, you just like, if you really have this reverence for what this man created, like that's not it. Like you're not holding what he built, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, you really have to kind of understand there is a certain leeway there. Like the fact that his violins sound so good in a lot of ways is just the age of the wood, and we can't really reproduce that because we don't have 200-year-old wood sitting around. I mean, in some cases we do, but yeah, no, I just think it's funny that people are so anal about Stradivari's instruments, but they've never heard one theoretically, and the music that we play on them are like not in tune to what they, because so we've never even really heard, a lot of people haven't really heard the traditional performance, like an actual truly Baroque performance of some of these like modern classical like pieces that we listen to in the modern age, not modern classical. But anyway, just people have all these ideas, but they don't think about how much shit has changed already. I don't know. It's just a weird.
I was actually just reading an article about I, I love psych, but like there are so many things that go into Stradivari violins, and apparently there's an amazing rainy season that really helped the wood grove right near he lived. All these different things that
Mm-hmm.
really, but then they also did a listening test with professionals and professional players and critics and everything with modern reproductions, just modern violins and Stradivari, and just like no one could tell. It was beautiful. I think it really is like has a lot to do with the player and the emotion and a lot of other things, but like I don't know, something I was gonna say just that I love about what you do, and I was ranting about this at the shop. Um, a lot of us were classically trained, and I think there's a lot of beautiful things about classical and Baroque, and the training that goes into it, and like really learning how to get as much tone and using all the different techniques. But I think sometimes there is people veer away from fun. There's kind of less of an emphasis on just the pure enjoyment of why we do it in the first, or why you sunk so many hours into learning how to make the box with strings sound good. And it's just really
Mm-hmm.
nice to see some like again, you really lean into the enjoyment and the curiosity. I think that like and just people going, yeah, what would happen if you put a violin in a beehive? Okay, I got to see that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. And for me, that's like the whole. I think people almost underestimate fun or how important enjoying things can be, and just. And this is also why like it's wonderful. One of the nice things about the shop and people like you is I have so less of a tolerance to gatekeeping. It's just none of us have time for that nonsense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm also biased because I think six-string fretted fiddles are really neat, and
You're
but
not wrong.
they're neat. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually did want to ask: have you gotten any like vitriolic pushback, or have you gotten anyone kind of being like, "My goodness"?
Well, I mean, that's the best. I mean, that's the ones I live for, really. A lot of people get it, but some people are like legitimately, I mean, I don't know. One person was like, "That's God's instrument," blah blah blah. They're just
Oh,
like really upset. But a lot of times I'll get, like a luthier might talk shit on me or something and say, "Oh, why are you mangling that? Why are you showing these people how to like set a sound post the wrong way? Or why aren't you doing this like in this perfect exact way? Or like your technique isn't correct." And like a lot of it is like criticism around what I'm actually doing. Um, but most of it's just like a fun amount of shock and horror. Like people say, "Oh, I feel you made me feel upset to my stomach," which is like good. That's like within the level. But other people go way out there. Like, man, I put something on my story like a year ago. Someone just flamed me for like 3 pages in my messages about how awful of a person I was. And I mean, that's fun for me, honestly. Like, I'm really not. I'm too laid back to really give it a shit about that kind of stuff. But that's exactly the reaction that I want from people, and I think my followers know that too. So they often give me like their feelings. I think again, it's all about like evoking that emotion. So I want to piss them off, but in a fun way. And I think you know the more you spend in your life revering this object, the more you want to just smash it on the ground. You know what I mean? Like you'll never have that personal satisfaction. We've been smashing guitars since like the '70s or whatever, and I mean that's like really cathartic. It's part of the experience of it. And not to say you should smash your violin, but you should let me smash violins and watch that. And I think that you'll really it'll be like an outlet for you, to feel a little closer to what you have. And every time you see me smash one, you hold your violin a little closer. You know what I mean? You have a certain respect for the one I'm not smashing. And for the record, I never break anything that has any real value, but I will break something up to like $50 or $100. And speaking of fretted, this is the ukulele, the violele,
Yes.
I guess,
yes.
that someone won just this week. And so I just literally took a ukulele fretboard and I had to move the bridge down because the ukulele has a longer string length. And so
Okay.
it's just a soprano ukulele. The back is a little rough because I didn't really carve it into the back, but basically as you're playing it, your finger follows. So you don't like feel the fact that the edges are there. But it's cool. So it's you can bow it too because the strings are far enough away.
Huh.
I'm not a violinist, so I really can't make it sound good. But I bet you if you gave it to someone, like if you guys borrowed it, you probably could. But that's like it's fun to experiment with frets, and I'm still even when I still play it with frets, I still suck. It's not the
Oh no,
frets.
no, it's not.
Hey,
It
me
doesn't matter.
too.
Yeah,
I thought
say
it'd be
like, come on.
easy. Yeah, I thought frets would make it easy, but no.
Yeah, they're not magic. I keep telling people that. I think
Yeah,
they're
and I
Yeah, I think there's this
so I
sort
was
of
gonna.
thing about like taking this very sacred object and just violating it that people respond so viscerally to that. It's sort of, we were talking earlier, it's sort of like the trash the dress phenomenon
Mhm.
that people will do with a wedding dress. Like after we're married, before the marriage, anybody who breathed on this dress is going to be summarily executed. And then afterwards, you're like, let's spray paint it and set it on fire, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think not everything I make is like a monstrosity. Like I like to think that some of the stuff could actually have some kind of market appeal, you know? Like I've got one where I drilled extra peg holes and I got six pegs into this one box, and then I basically have two courses or three courses of two each, or I don't know how is courses the anyway, but like so it's
Yeah, so
a
like
six string
mandolin
violin.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I use octave strings. So you can buy these really heavy violin strings,
Yes.
and so if the mass determines like the frequency, so they're just these really heavy ass strings. So I can put like two G's next to each other and have like the octave tune. I have a video of it, and it's on the wall somewhere. But things like that, I feel could be interesting. And I work with this guy. I don't want to say work, but Andrew Scott Bell is one of the composers in horror movies, and he's doing the new Winnie the Pooh horror movie, Blood and Honey. And so I donated two of my instruments to him One was this like cigar box guitar that I put like really, really heavy bass strings on, so it makes these really like guttural, growly, scratchy growls. And then there's like a violin to the side of the fretboard, so it's like two fretboards. And so you can get all the way into these high, like screechy, screechy horror sounds, but it's like growly, low horror sounds. And so I just, the horror thing really vibed with me. And I think that some of my other instrumental creations might have like a niche application in there, like the two, the octave tuned six string and things like that. I mean, they make sounds that probably aren't. I mean, it's first of all, it's difficult to play because you have to double stop every string, and it's actually much harder than you'd think to get your finger like right perfectly across, so that each string is in tune at every location. So I mean, it's not a practical instrument, but I mean, I'd love to see it in a movie or do something fun like that with it. And like that's part of what drives me is like maybe I'm trying to think of another one, but there's a lot of stuff I've made that like I mean maybe for this fretted violin, like I could potentially get someone into violin having something with frets at first, or I mean who knows. But there's some kind of niche market. Not that I'm trying to make money or anything on it, but I like to think that it's not all just like a throwaway, like look what I did and put it on the wall. It's like, there's some interest there. Like there's some innovation. I like thinking about things and building things, Like I'm also getting into CNC, so some of my work involves actually like 3D modeling. Like one of the ideas that I want to do is how like basses have those extensions that you can slap on at the very top, and sometimes they even have these like little paddles, like a clarinet or whatever. If I could like 3D model that and 3D print that for a violin or something, that could be some stupid violin extension. Like you don't really see that as kind of an obvious gimmick, but still fun. And maybe someone would actually use it. Like maybe you would compose a song where you want to go down an extra couple of steps on the violin, or who the hell knows? I mean, it's just little stupid, silly shit like that.
Well, it's one of the things I love about your presence and what you do is that it's the willingness to experiment. It just allows for so many cool results and unique sounds. And like, I think composing for horror films is a perfect example of just like unique tones and really cool applications, and then you can carry it on. Like, oh man, there's definitely so many times when you're like, if only I could just extend the neck a little, or you're just like, there's something weird. And like,
right.
Oh, it's great.
He gets it. No,
yeah, and
I mean, I think
a lot of them are questions that deserve to be asked, right? Why can't I put an extension on there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like someone probably has. And every time I Google stuff, I see even more and crazier things. I mean, I'm not the first person to fuck with a violin, I mean, I'm not going to like claim any kind of, I mean, you called me genius in the beginning, and I don't claim to be that. And I don't personally think that. I'm just kind of just some asshole that likes to mess with violins, and piss people off while I do it.
Hey, me too.
I might steal that line for a business card. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, Pete Hartley is in the UK. He asked, I think is it possible to connect a violin to electricity so it kills the player when he or she plays a C sharp? I think that's actually a Nick Hyde question. So
I personally would put I'd drill out the fretboard and put like a little metal piece. And so when you got to that point on that string, it would make the connection, and the metal piece would be like highly electric. And so as soon as you got to that position, you'd ground it, and maybe you wear a bracelet on your other hand so it passes through your heart just to make sure the job is done.
Is it impressive or disturbing how fast you came up with that?
The bracelet is a great idea.
See, I was thinking a software solution. You were going with hardware.
Well, I mean, there are several C sharps too, so you could place one of those things at every one. I mean, that's one way to do it.
Just have a line of murder violins. I mean,
there's
got to be a market.
I mean, maybe you could have it shock you, so when you're not like perfectly intonated, like everywhere but the exact place your finger has to be, it could be like a slight discomfort.
See, I feel like my teacher would have been into that. Mm-hmm. My teacher would have definitely been into 50 volts. Yeah. Yeah, that C wasn't quite a C.
I just would have gotten shocked all the time. Yeah,
I'm still getting shocked all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm an engineer. I went to school for computer engineering, so I think a lot about problem solving. And actually, I have a degree in electronics, like computer engineering. So I think I've tried I've tried specifically to stay away from getting too deep into electronics. I went to college to actually build like analog synthesizers because that was kind of my interest at the time. And then things kind of moved away from the actual hardware. And so that's when I moved closer to like the software stuff and I'm in mobile phone development right now. But yeah, like I'm always thinking of like different solutions. And so, yeah, so like a lot of stuff comes in mind and it comes quickly because like that's kind of my job. And not that I'm trying to, you know, electrocute people with violins, but I could think of 10 ways to do it for sure. Yeah.
Not that we would have a journal of murder violins or anything. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Don't look.
If
Have you ever
somebody
seen
gets
that
killed
Hannibal
by a
Lecter
violin, it
episode? I
wasn't
think
one
it's
of
one of
us.
the first.
It's like this just in. Like, oh darn. No shoot.
So Raphael is asking, he said, what if you would heat the strings in order to shorten them and adjust tuning automatically while playing? I don't know. If we could, how could you, yeah, if we're thinking about temperature and violins, like, is there a way to make a violin that's on fire while you're playing it?
There's
So are you trying to account for just like the detuning of different temperatures when you're playing? And that sounds tricky. Have you ever seen those electric guitar tuners where the actual tuning pegs are on
Yeah, they're
gears
motorized.
yes.
and I like motorize it? Like I could totally. I've done a couple of experiments where I put a guitar head on a violin. I actually have like a Warlock head that I did, so you could actually get like those motorized tuners. So I could see something like that, like a smaller version of like those motorized guitar tuners. But that does sound pretty technically difficult.
Think about a B bender.
It's
You know, the B benders on those country guitars.
Oh.
uh,
That's
like some kind of physical way
right.
to.
It's also just like I think we had a guy build a violin that shot sparks out. at
Oh
one
yeah,
point. Not quite fire, but I was like, what about just an on fire?
yeah. Mark Wood had one that shot rockets out of it.
That's good. There you go. That's another one of the murder
Yeah, I was
ones.
like, didn't expect
That's a
to
murder
do
one
murder
instead of a
violins, but, you know,
suicide one.
Thanks for including me.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe
Uh,
there would be something you could do with, just sort of taking that whole idea and running with it, like doing a violin that was like literally burning while you're playing it.
I feel like someone's made an ice violin.
my friend wanted. Oh yeah, ice violins. That's a thing. I think they have like an ice band in like the Nordic area. I don't know. I think I've seen it that. My one friend actually wanted me to set a violin on fire and let him play it, but I didn't think it was safe.
Fair.
So we did it. I mean, we did one full of water, and I did put one in a grill. I live in
Good.
California, so it's actually really really illegal to set things on fire and have fireworks
Oh.
because of all the forest fires and stuff. And so it's really hard. Like I have to go to the beach or something to do something like that.
Well, if you're
Or
going to
maybe
do
in my
that, just come to
backyard.
North Carolina, and then we can have some violin
Yeah,
burnings. Yeah.
yeah, we can shoot it and stuff, and just put rattlesnakes in it or rattlesnake tails and stuff. Do you guys see that a lot around you?
I did have a friend who
Rattlesnakes.
there was a guy who was experimenting and definitely started building violins with gator skulls on them, which was fun. You see a lot of rattlesnakes, not as many violins made out of rattlesnakes, but I think there's might be a market for them.
Well, I mean, like the tails. Don't you ever see the tails inside of them? That's like not like a thing.
Tails
No.
inside
Yeah,
to
to
like
make it
have
rattle.
the rattle.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody do it yet, but I mean like
Oh.
that.
I did a post about it once. So I did a little bit of research, and it's mostly for just like the sake of it. I don't think it really changes the violin so much, but it's more of just like a southern thing, I guess. It just kind of makes them feel
It's
a
a
certain
southern
way. I
thing.
don't really know.
It's a...
There's a lot of superstition
Mm.
in violins and really in anything. So it would be cool that we could make a violin with a rattlesnake in it, like you were suggesting, and I could go with the murder violin.
I like the idea that you would just have a live rattlesnake. So you'd be like, hey, you got to feed it every once in a while. His name's Jim. Don't worry about it. Like, just poke his head out every once in a while. Doesn't change much, but it's nice to have company, you know?
Yeah,
I did a
remember the shoes?
collaboration
You used to
with
be able to get
with.
shoes, the
goldfish.
acrylic heel that had the goldfish swimming around in it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh,
You have like goldfish in the violin,
we just got
like it's like a
note. That
violin-shaped clear plexiglass thing.
Yeah.
Oh, violin with a fish in it.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yeah, because I mean, when I poured water in that violin, I found that the resonance of it really didn't change too much. And if anything, I mean, the sound travels faster through water, but is more
Mm.
like dampened. So it's kind of like a give and take. And in that experiment, when we had the thing full of water, I felt that it was fairly close to the original sound, like not as muted as I expected. And so I think that if you did fill a violin with water, like a clear plastic violin, and put like a fish in it or whatever, I mean, it would be playable. I think that it could sound okay, honestly.
So Brian King Joseph is a friend of mine. He was on America's Got Talent a few years ago, and in one of his music videos, he's playing underwater. He's got an electric violin with lights on it, and he goes underwater. As a side note, Brian can't swim, but that's a whole nother discussion. But he was playing the violin underwater, and he said the part that surprised him was that the bow actually still made the strings make sound, but the pitch changed.
Wow.
He was like, all of a sudden, like A is not 440 anymore. It was a totally different pitch.
Interesting.
And it sort of threw him off. And then he almost drowned. And then he had to think about something else.
That makes sense because it's, as the waveform moves, it's going slower. So it effectively stretches it out. So I would expect the pitches to be lower. Lower? I don't know. But it was pretty cool. And I actually did see that video, I think. I follow him. He doesn't post very much, or maybe Instagram doesn't show it to me very much. But I did see that video. A lot of my followers, I get a lot of people sending me videos about like, oh, look at this violin that someone broke, or look at someone mishandling this violin, or look at this like weird violin hybrid. So I'm just like this fly trap for all these memes and posts, which is good because like some of them I like enough that I'll repost it, or like it'll inspire me. And this is part of why I do the page, is to be able to kind of be a net for all this like weird shit. So typically when something goes viral, I'll see it like 10 or so times. People will just keep sending that shit to me. So yeah, I'm pretty on top of all the violin breaking stuff on the internet. But yeah, that video was pretty cool.
Yeah, Chris gave us a note.
It's cool that he actually...
Eric Keebler is the guy that made the violin that shoots sparks out of it. Mark Wood made the one with the rockets, but Eric Keebler had a spark violin.
Also made a note that it's Keebler like the elves.
Like the elves.
Here,
in case I didn't know how to say Keebler.
Right.
Okay.
Are they... Yeah, it's Keebler's elves, or the Keebler, are they the elves? Is that the last name of the elves, or is that Keebler's elves? Like, does Keebler own the elves?
We are very close to going down a rabbit hole of discussing like what is up with these elves. Are they related? Is this a like we can totally...
Is it a family of Keebler elves, or is it some guy owned the elves? That's all I want to know. Like,
one of these is more disturbing than the other.
Conspiracy is afoot. That's all I know.
Because like the Smurfs, they're all kind of named Smurf or some shit, right? Like, is that the same, or I don't know.
Are they all related? And if so, why are they interested in Smurfette?
Also, why are they humans anyway? Murder violence.
Yeah, Pete Hardley had a question about liquid nitrogen. He was like, yeah, could you try playing in a bath of liquid nitrogen? I would not advise anybody to get into a bath of liquid nitrogen. But it did make me think about, what if you did chill a violin in liquid nitrogen? Would it shatter when it hit something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
only
a
one
lot
way
of
to
times
find out.
I'm curious.
I know a guy.
When I put a violin like in a dishwasher, for example, the glue eventually breaks down, and then the string tension will rip the neck upward, or a lot of times the end pin will come out or break, or like, the failures start to happen in these predictable places. So I think that if you, having no experience with liquid nitrogen, I feel like you could probably dip it in and still play it, but I would be afraid that the strings would rip the thing apart. Because, I mean, does it make it stronger or less strong when you freeze the hell out of this thing? I mean, it feels like maybe more strong. Like, and I think it also depends on like the water content, like how humid the room is might potentially lock in different humidity. And yeah, that's some science shit right there. I'd love to try it.
Yeah.
If you believe in yourself, I think it would sound great.
I would definitely, if I knew where to get liquid nitrogen, maybe I'll look into it. I think it'd be cool to dip it in there and just see what you can do to it before it just like explodes on you.
Yeah.
I tend to think that what you see in the movies maybe isn't as accurate. Like, I don't think, the Terminator's arm is going to
What?
explode or whatever into like a giant cloud.
Wait, Terminator's not real? Hold on. I don't
That
know
would be
why I
cool
thought this
though.
idea was funny. I have a couple friends who do glass art. Um, my partner does stained glass, and she was like, "Oh, every once in a while, there's like a 3% chance you might get molten metal or it'll explode or something." I was like, "There's a 3% chance it'll explode." I was like, "What if you did
That's
make a
high.
violin? There's just a 3% chance any given day, just for the little extra, 2% chance. Not a large chance of explosion. It doesn't have to be a violent explosion, just a shower of wood and festive.
Ah, don't this. I always got worried that like the strings are going to pop off. And I actually know a guy who knows a guy that blinded himself in one eye from a violin string.
Oh,
And so I guess that happens. And that would make me nervous. Like I would just feel nervous like having this thing up against my face and I'm just wailing on it and like what happens when a violin string breaks? Don't you guys
Yeah, I've had one
Are you
came
guys ever
and like
nervous?
and had it hit me in the face, but I don't know. It would enough to put my eye out. It would enough to
it's enough to be like, good
maybe look
lord.
like a pirate for a minute, but
I mean, you normally
I mean, plus they're wound, right? Like most of them are also wound so that
mm.
the inside breaks, but then the wind kind of like holds it back.
Yeah, I
I
have
guess
had
some
them
of
pop
them,
every now and then. It's pretty rare though.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just get nervous.
do.
That's kind of stuff. I'll just be flinching the whole time.
See, if you do come visit us in North Carolina, though, we may have to do one where we pull out a 12 gauge and
Oh,
blast a violin with a shotgun.
I
I know a guy.
I know a guy who
That would be
should.
fun. That's definitely on my list. I really want to. I talked to some photographers, and apparently renting like a super slow mo camera is like really expensive. But you can get, actually being able to see the pieces fly away like at slow mo. I mean, to be able to record that, you're recording like a ridiculous number of frames a
Right.
second.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a shame, but I really want to blow stuff up and shoot stuff, but I also feel like I don't have the equipment to properly give it justice, to see the
Right.
pieces fly out slowly and give it that like slow mo explosion walk away effect and stuff. Like
See,
one of these days, though.
I appreciate the professionalism. Somebody who really wants to blow something up and knows they don't quite have the camera for it. You're just like, come on, gotta do this
Yeah,
right.
right. I mean, someday maybe when I'm, rich and famous for being the violin torture, I'll have that kind of budget.
That's
Be
right.
an actual like YouTube star or something.
So I think once you get to, what is it, 100,000 subs on YouTube, that you've got access to their YouTube studios.
Oh, can
What's
you
that
watch?
about?
Yeah, something to talk about. Maybe off air. I may have just had a thought for you
Yeah,
off air. Um,
I started YouTube once, but I just don't. I don't. I don't maintain my Instagram for like any kind of financial gain. In fact, it costs me money to run it. I don't sell anything. I don't really like to necessarily spend my time building stuff for people. I like to build stuff for myself mostly. So I haven't tried too hard to spread it around to TikTok and to YouTube, but I think in the near future I'm gonna start disseminating that stuff more to the other social media platforms and hopefully build a following on TikTok and YouTube just to hit a couple more eyeballs of all this weird shit and so that's definitely one of my future goals, I guess.
yeah,
But
your
it's not
video froze, but we still got audio, so that's fine. They can just look at
okay.
Eli's smiling, beaming visage. Um,
Can you still can you see me now?
we can see you, but
Yes,
you're
but
you're
Uh,
stationary.
you're
It's
very
all good.
stoic.
uh,
So what's coming up? Do you have any ideas coming up that we can tease and let our audience know what might be coming soon?
um, I started making videos with one of my friends, and we have this really short video about this Team Fortress 2 thing where they talk about this bucket. I don't know if you've seen it. It's kind of gone viral, but I got 1.1 million views on it so far, and it's really got me thinking. Not that I want to give in to what's popular, but I think sometimes it's fun to make stuff that will find success commercially, and so I kind of want to do a little bit more silly stuff, and I think it was fun working with someone else to kind of do like a back and forth type of thing. So I'd like to do a couple more videos that are more trending, but still with my personal touch on it. I try to everything I do. I try to have some form of like cringy instrument, mistreatment. And I think that as long as it has that element, then it's on brand for me, and it's something I like to do. So one of my ideas actually is I'm gonna cut a violin bow hair and have my female friend like condition and comb it all out and actually like curl it and stuff and turn it into like a legitimate like human hair extension.
Mm.
And then I'll have like a little video of showing like the conversion from a horsehair violin bow to like some beautiful woman with like this new curl in her hair that like is the bow.
Oh,
And I think that it'll look good when I compress it into like this quick little reel that everybody wants to see. I think that's kind of the content. And in the beginning, I was focusing more on these like long form content around like, hey, look at all these violins I bought, or like, look at me spend 20 minutes, fixing a violin, or 20 minutes doing something else. And I just realized that it takes so much effort to make a video that size that I'm mostly focused on the like, not low effort, but the stuff that I know is going to do well. And that stuff usually lasts like 30 seconds or less. And so it kind of wrangles you into not having to spend so much time on that content because it is so short. Every time I work really hard, like spend 6 hours on something, it's not disappointing because I really like to do the thing, but it's just like, it really feels like the more time you spend on it, the less people like it. Not, I mean, video quality is important, but like, yeah, I think that's the thing that people appreciate is the quality of it. But if you make a more elaborate scene or you try to spend a little bit more time on it, you're just like losing eyeballs. And that's just kind of how social media works. And it gets in the way of like the performative nature of like the art. But I think my future content is going to try to straddle what I want to do and what kind of people want to see in an effort to, still grow my user base. Cause I think that I'm not doing it for likes, but I do like to see my following increase, and it kind of gives me a sense of like accomplishment. So every time I hit like another 1,000 people or a certain milestone, I think, okay, well, maybe I'll keep going because it's like it's fun to have that kind of accreditation and get people to kind of know who you are, talk about you in like your store. Like I'm not a genius or anything. I'm just kind of this dude that fucks with violins, and it's really came as like almost serendipitously, like I really didn't expect to torture violins, and it's fine. I'm just going to kind of do what feels right. And we'll see how that goes.
you didn't wake up just being like, I will torture violins one day.
As long as people are interacting with it in a positive way, or slightly less positive, which is also preferred, I think like I'll keep doing it because it's something that I want to do, and it really. I think the number one reason why I started my page is selfishly because I wanted to force myself to like learn a song or play something, and then the end goal being to share it with these people, and these people like saying, "Oh, cool, I watched that and I liked it," and so that kind of it gives me like the urge. Okay, well, I guess I'll do that again. And so if I didn't have an Instagram to like feed all my content to, I would have no reason to really keep myself moving towards that goal. I'm kind of lazy, I guess you could say. Like I need like a teacher to keep me to practice. You know what I mean? If like I don't have a weekly lesson, then I'm not going to practice for that lesson. And so this is what Instagram is for me. It's like every week I want to come up with something, and that something has to be musical. So I've learned something to be able to create that. I've done a thing, I've made something, that thing exists in the world, or that knowledge is now mine. And that keeps me on top of things, and it keeps me like touched in the musical community. And I think that's like the biggest reason to have an Instagram is just to really push yourself to do weird shit and
yeah, it's like
have that
accountability,
accountability.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
having something to get ready for, and also having something to get new ideas out. And like, I do think people really
For sure,
resonate.
yeah.
Like, I think you can tell that you really enjoy what you're doing. I think it's more important than anything else. Just like at the end of the day, I think we've all tried to watch a video of someone who just doesn't enjoy the thing that they're filming, and it's like, but just it's awesome seeing somebody enjoy what they're doing, what they're filming, what they're making.
Yeah, it's a sadistic kind of joy, and honestly, a lot of times I'm like drunk or something, so it really is like it's like my pure thoughts and feelings.
well, you talk about people
it is
like
a lot of
being
fun.
angry at what you're doing. Like with my music, I don't care if it makes you angry or if it makes you happy. The only thing that would bother me is if you had no emotional reaction to it at all.
Mhm.
As long as
Yeah.
you have an emotional reaction to what I'm doing, then it means that what I'm doing is art on some level.
Didn't you pour
Right.
beer on a violin at the shop?
A little bit, yeah.
We did pour beer on a violin at the shop.
Yeah.
Nice.
It had it coming.
Isn't that like a fiddler joke?
Yeah, it was the
About,
difference
like-
between a violin and a fiddle.
right,
It was
yeah.
a fiddle is a violin that's had beer spilled on it.
I've never
Yeah.
heard that joke before in my life.
No more than a couple thousand times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that I love about the fiddler versus classical. Is like they play the same instrument, but the mindset about it is totally different. Like the fiddlers, they get it. They're like, yeah, there's rattlesnakes and beers and shit, and their violins. Like, okay, like they're having fun, right? They're like on their, stereotypical porch or whatever, doing what they do. And the classical people are like putting a violin in a case when they go to sleep, and I don't know. It's not to hate on the it's just like certain individuals in those groups. It's not those groups. I'm not, you know what I mean?
All bad. No.
But they're, yeah, I mean, they have a reputation for a reason, right?
No, I mean, there's so much beauty to be found in the classical world. I think a lot of joy, but like, shoot, I don't think I could have made it through the past 3 years without a porch and a fiddle. Chris, who works at the shop, the other day he was yelling about Itzhak Perlman once referred to his Stradivari violin as his fiddle multiple times on record. So you can be like, Itzhak Perlman, yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine.
We have this debate on one of my posts, and apparently it's pretty contentious. Like what do you like? What's the difference between a violin and a fiddle?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, okay, it's the same thing physically, but if you're playing like a fiddle in music, you're playing the fiddle, and if you're playing like classical, you're playing the violin. But it's like physically the same object that kind of has a different permanence depending on how you're like using it. And other people made a distinction where like a fiddle probably has like a less of an angle on the bridge so that you can get more double stops. Fiddle has like a setup that's made for different style of music that's more fiddle-like. And so, yes, you could play classical music on a fiddle, or you could fiddle on a fiddle, or whatever you call it. But I mean, my view is that a fiddle does have a setup that is geared more towards a certain musical style, and like a violin feels like it's either more generalized or more kind of defaults to the classical side of its setup. And there is differences, like, yes, you could take a fiddle and play some kind of Bach stuff, but that's, it's not the point. Like I think there's a difference between a violin and a fiddle, and it's not just the beer.
It's also interesting, like, what type of fiddle are you talking about? If it's bluegrass versus Irish versus klezmer versus like Canadian or
right,
like they're all gonna have. Somebody once described to me as Irish music, you're trying to play one note beautifully, and bluegrass, you're trying to play as many notes as possible. It just have old time, you get some extra
for sure. And that's like a slightly different physical, like it's different, right? If there's a physical change to the instrument, that doesn't make it a different instrument, but a fiddle and a violin are technically different in my mind, physically. Just like a Nordic fiddle, they have like the sympathetic strings and stuff. Obviously, there's huge physical differences, but I mean, it's called a Nordic fiddle, and it has a pretty flat bridge, which to me speaks to the fact that it is more fiddle-like, and that the fiddle does have a physical form that makes it be able to like, relate the Nordic fiddle to an actual fiddle. So again, that's just like more proof to me that is such a thing as a fiddle. Like nobody calls it a Nordic violin because they aren't ever set up like that. They're not classically set up.
That is a very good point from somebody who loves to say that they're the same thing and just go, That is an extremely good point.
Oh no.
Yeah, well.
Not going on this rabbit hole.
Hey man,
as long as there's a popular opinion I can, tear to pieces, I'll
that's right.
try my best.
He's just poking the bear.
Yes.
He's poking the bear. Yeah. It's been great chatting with you, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Seriously.
and remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just Violin Torch on Instagram. Maybe in a few months I'll be on TikTok and YouTube. But for now, And there's only one Violin Torture. There's been a bunch of fake accounts lately. So
What?
Yeah.
just Violin Torture. No space, no underscore.
And thanks for
And
letting
yeah, I
me.
appreciate the follow. And I'm taking suggestions from anybody to, I will torture on demand.
Thanks for letting me crash the conversation. It's really lovely to talk to you. And
Yeah, great meeting both of you guys.
if you are ever in North Carolina, we would love to do terrible, terrible things to violins together. Just
Yeah. My mom lives in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which I guess is as
oh,
close as I'll ever get.
yeah. Oh,
But maybe we'll meet halfway.
Yeah, when you come,
Fun.
maybe we'll meet up and we'll eat some barbecue out of a violin or
Right.
something.
I was like, oh,
Yeah, ooh, that's nice. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
Sounds
Awesome.
cool.
Well, thank you so much. We're
Seriously,
gonna
thank
end the
you.
broadcast here. So thanks everybody for hanging out, and we will see you next week.